Hello, this is Adam Salmon here, and I'm going to be showing you how you can use Jira together with Spira from Inflectra and Inflectra.ai to take a user story we're going to create in Jira. We're going to use Inflectra.ai to review that requirement and give us feedback on the quality of it, and then generate an action task of how to improve that requirement. We're going to push that to Jira. We're then going to make an update to the requirement in Jira based on that feedback. And then we're going to take that new updated requirement in Spira and use it to build out some test cases and some risks to help our testing team. So let's go ahead and see that in action. First thing is we're going to go into Jira here and create a new user story. So I go into Jira with user story in my backlog, and I would say, as a customer, I want to be able to, let's say, book a hotel room. And I'll copy that and also put that in the description as well, right here. We choose a component, use the priorities, that's all we need. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create that. And that's now created. And we're going to then head over to Spira. And then we're going to see that user story / requirement appear. As you can see, if I refresh my page and expand my requirements tree, you can see there's my new requirement that just came in from Jira. Let me click on it. As a customer, I want to book a hotel room. As a customer, I want to book a hotel room. And there's the ID from Jira, and there's the link back to Jira as well. So Jira is a source of truth for my requirements. And now the QA team can take that requirement and they can use the power of Inflectra.ai, which is the icon you see here in the top right. And I can use my new feature to analyze the writing quality of this requirement. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And as you can see, it has reviewed the requirement. It's told me what's good. It's 2 out of 5, so it's somewhat good. Here's my improvement suggestions. And what I can do now is I can create a task. It's now creating a task how to improve that requirement. The task will appear right here. And if you look at the task, how to improve that requirement to make it more compliant, I'll click on it. And there you can see the name, and then there's detailed description. And it's giving me the exact information there that it would recommend we do to improve that requirement. And what will happen is that improvement is going to make its way over to Jira as a new subtask. So let's go ahead and see that in action. So over here in Jira, we can see there's the exact same task. Let's click on it. Oops, I want to click on it, not edit it. And there's my description here of how to improve it. So let's go ahead and pretend that we improve that requirement. To do that, we'll click back on our user story, and it said add more specificity, include error handling, specify when is allowed, that kind of stuff. So let's pretend we can improve that. So what we'll do is let's go back to my user story, which is right here. And there's my description. And we'll edit it and say, as a customer, I want to be able to book a hotel room. The system should ask me for my arrival and departure dates and the city / location I want the room for, and any special requests. If the room is not available, it should let me know. And if the dates or city are not valid, it should give me a nice, easy to understand message. So basically, I'm taking that feedback about specificity, and I've now improved my requirement. So I hit save. I have now improved that requirement based on that feedback. And if we go back into Spira, we can also see that the task is here. And we see, we didn't talk about security, the exact conditions, communications for confirmation. So maybe I'll make one more change, which would be, if it is successful, it should give me a clear confirmation message and send me an email with the same information. So using the information that's in the Jira subtask or in the Spira task, whichever you prefer, which is right here, I can now update that requirement, and it will then update back into Spira. So let's go ahead back into Spira now and see the updated user story. And here we are back in Spira. You can see the updated description has come over from Jira. We go to our history tab. You can see the change in description right there. And now we have this new description. We can also use the AI to do another review. Let's go ahead and review it a second time. Let's see how it gets on. So it's gone from a 2 to a 3. And it's given me, again, more discrete suggestions about how I can make it better. For example, I didn't specify the format of the departure dates and arrival dates. Maybe we use a date picker, that kind of thing. So you can see right away, it's giving us multiple iterations to slowly improve our requirement from a 2 to a 3. And eventually, we can create another subtask that will get pushed back to Jira to do the same thing. Now, obviously, we can continue to do that. Just for today's demo, I'm not going to go ahead and do any further, but you get the idea. Now that we have a requirement that is in better shape, we can now use it as the source for the other artifacts. So what we can typically do is decide to create some test cases. So how can we test the functionality? Well, let's create some test cases. So I hit the button here, and it's now going to generate some test cases to validate that functionality. Doing that. It's generating 10 different test cases with a combined total of 38 test steps. And you can see there they are. If I go test coverage, you'll see these are my test cases. I'm just going to close the sidebar. We've got positive things like verified booking with valid dates and location, checking the confirmation message details, checking the email also comes, checking the validation for unavailable rooms, checking edge cases. Let's look at that one. Here's some good examples. So you can see here, it's trying to verify edge cases where we can't get in certain dates that make sense. We're going to, arrive and depart certain dates with no past dates, overlapping dates, or maybe a stay that's so long that the hotel is really more of a long-term rental, which hotels don't usually want. So it's giving us some really good positive and negative test cases right here for our business rules. So again, that's the power of AI. Think about that for a second. Using AI, we've improved our requirements quality. We've generated test cases that would take normally, several days to write in a few minutes. And it's probably found at least 1 or 2 test cases that the team probably would have overlooked. For example, the overlapping dates or the stay that's over a year. That makes sense. And things that we often don't forget to test. So the value there is both productivity benefits, but also reducing risk and reducing the chance of missing something during testing. Well, speaking of risk, let's go back to my requirement. The other thing we can do is do a risk assessment. So I'll go in here and I will choose the option to do a risk assessment. So we're now going to do a risk assessment of this specific requirement right there. The risks are incorrect booking details, availability, and failure to send an email. Let's look at the failure to send an email. That's one of the risks that was identified. There's the risk. There's a description of the risk. And now we can, as a human, we can go in here and we can now rate that risk. So what's the likelihood of this happening? Emails are often tricky, so I would say it's possible. The impact, it's not critical because they are getting a visual message confirmation, but on the other hand, they will navigate away and lose that. So it is useful to have that for people so they don't call customer support. So I would say it's critical, but maybe not catastrophic. Hit save. We're now giving it an exposure score, and we can do the same thing for the other different risks. But the other thing we can do, as well as generate risks and categorize them, is we can also mitigate them. And the AI can be really good here at mitigating them. So let's generate some mitigations, how we can reduce the likelihood of this risk happening and manifesting. So it's coming up with 7 different mitigations right here. Implement automated email verification checks, alternative methods like SMS, retry, customer support improvements to account where it doesn't happen, that sort of thing. So there's several good risks here. Now, based on that, let's think about this. How does this, if we implement all of these different things, how would that change the impact and the probability of that risk? Well, I think it would at the very least reduce the likelihood, because we're now doing significant testing to prevent the email not being sent. And some of these mitigations talk about improving the customer support experience to handle those. So I would say even the impact is now reduced. It's more marginal. So we'll hit save, and our risk can now get us down from a 9 to a 4. So by means of these mitigations, we have actually reduced the overall exposure from a 9 to a 4 and reduced our total risk. So if we now go back to our requirement, which is right here in the associations tab, you can see this risk association shows there are 3 different risks identified with that particular requirement. We reduced the impact of one of them. We will go through each of them in turn, and we could obviously reduce the exposure by mitigating them. We can also look at our risk cube and see all the risks we have plotted and see what is the distribution of risks. And we would obviously want to look at this one here that says certain and catastrophic, and hopefully reduce that as well. So using AI, we can plot our risks and see the impact they have on the overall project right here in our main dashboard. And the same thing is true with the test cases. We've generated some test cases using AI, and those will show up in our testing view dashboard showing the test coverage. So we've got, again, a good test coverage of these requirements by using AI. And of course, by also improving the requirement, we've made the likelihood of the test cases and the risks themselves being better. Because unless you start with a good requirement, the AI is not necessarily going to be able to improve it much. So you can take the requirements that came in from Jira. We can use the functionality of our AI to analyze them and send back tasks into Jira for the BA team or the development team to update those requirements in line with those. So thanks for watching today's video. Hope it was helpful. And if you have any questions, reach out to one of our account managers. Thanks so much.